Welcome to lesson number 29, Learn C Programming on the Raspberry Pi. Okay, last day we were talking about operators, or finishing up our discussion on operators. Today I'd like to begin talking about pointers in the C language. So I've already gone over onto the Pi. And let me start up Genie so we can get some code going here. Okay, so just as a quick review, last day we talked about unary operators, binary operators, trinary operators. And we gave some examples here, and these examples are all uploaded onto my GitHub account up here. Okay, so today we'd like to begin our discussion on pointers, which will probably take more than one lesson. So let's get started. We'll start with a new program. And what I'll do in this program is I will declare a pointer. In fact, I'll make a pointer to an integer. So, and I'll just call it star P. This is the syntax we use for a pointer. And I'll also just include an integer as well. Let's say x, and I'll give it a value of 42. Okay. And then what I'll do is I'll assign the pointer to x this way. I'll say P is equal to the address of x. So remember that what a pointer is just simply an address. So if you think about your computer, and your computer has maybe, let's say it has 8 gigabytes of RAM, well, every byte has an address. It's like 8 billion mailboxes. That's one way to look at it. So let's print some of these values out here just to see what they look like. We'll say, first of all, we'll say x is %d/n comma x. So we'll print out the value of x. We know that should print out as 42. And then what we'll do is we'll print out the value of p, and p is a pointer, so we'll print it out as %p/n comma p. Oh, better put a double quote there. Okay. So that p is going to be our address in RAM, where we can store an integer. And next we'll print out the value, or the value at p is %d/n quote comma star p. Okay, now I'll explain these. We'll go over this when I run the code. And let me save this guy here. So I'll say File, Save As, and this is lesson 29. So I think I need to make a folder here. So I'll call this Lesson-29. And the name of my file, let's call it ptr1.c. Pointer1.c will be the name of my code. Okay, so I can compile this guy now. Okay, and if I wanted to, I could just to verify again, if I go to my build commands, you will notice that I'm using C99 still. So from now on, until I tell you, I'll be using the C99 command or the C99 standard. Okay. So I'll just go through and build this guy, and go ahead and build it. And it says here, compilation finished successfully. And I think if I open a terminal down here, I can probably run it right here in Genie. Lessons LESSON -29. So there it is there. And if I say /ptr1, you can see what I have here. So let's put some comments into our code just so we can understand what's going on. So I will comment this guy here. I will say this is P is a pointer to some integer. Next I'll say X is an integer initialized to 42. And then finally I'll say use the ampersand address of operator to assign P to the, I guess I'll need another line here, to the address of X. So what I'm doing here is just I'm saying, well, P, we know that P is an address, is a pointer. So I'll just put that up here again just to make sure you get the idea. ADDRESS. P is a pointer, address to some integer. But we haven't told it which integer P is pointing to. And then we create an integer here called X. We assign it a value of 42. And then we use this address of here to give P a value. So P is going to have the value of the address of X. And then so we print out X here in this line. So I'll just, oops. Here we go. Print X. And then we can go here, print P. So remember, P is an address in the computer now, so it's going to come out as a hexadecimal number. Okay. Now down here in this line, what we're going to do is use the asterisk, which we call DREFEREN, dereference operator. Let's see. to print the value at address P. Now, does that make sense? I hope so. So we're saying that, let's go over this again. I know some of you are just beginners at C, and since I'm aiming these at my grandson who's only 12, I want to make sure you get this because this is important. So I'm declaring here P as a pointer to an integer. I could have a pointer to a character. I could have a pointer to a float or a double. I could have a pointer to a structure, or pointer to a union, which we haven't covered yet. I could even have pointers to functions. But we'll start right now just with a very simple pointer to an integer. A pointer is an address. At this point, there is no value for P on line 4. We do give a value to P on line 6. Okay, so if I save this guy again, if I right on the command line, I can compile it again. C99 pointer1.c minus O pointer 1. And then I can run it again, pointer 1. Okay? So you can see the address of where P is stored. It's a hexadecimal number, and the number is this number, BE8C8240. That's supposedly the address of where that of where the 42 is stored. Okay? What's important to note also is that there's only one 42 in the computer's RAM. But X here is the address of the 42, and P is also the address of the 42. So there's two ways we can access X. We can do it like this, by just saying X is the value of X, or we can do it like this, saying the value of P, the value at P, is using the dereference operator to dereference that address. Okay. Now there's a couple of things that may confuse people, so I'll just want to clarify that. For example, if I did something like this, if I said, let's say we have a float pointer. If I say float star FP, so I'll say FP is a pointer to a float. Well, I could also do the syntax wise, I could also do it like this. I could put spaces there, and that means the same thing. Okay? Or I could do it like this, and that means the same thing. So for example, let me delete this guy here. If I was to take this asterisk here and leave a space here, and I can still compile it without problems. Or I could move the asterisk over here, save it, and I could still compile it without problems. So the question is, where do you put that asterisk when you're declaring a pointer? Well, let me show you how you can run into trouble if you're not careful. Suppose I did this. Float. And I said star FP1, comma, FP2, comma, FP3. Well, let's say I move this asterisk over here. You might be tempted to think that FP1, FP2, and FP3 are all pointers to a float. But then you would be incorrect, because this asterisk only applies to FP1. Okay? So it's probably a lot neater if you move the asterisk right beside the variable you want to make a float pointer. So basically this is saying that FP1 is a pointer to a float, but FP2 is just a float, and FP3 is also just a float. So it's probably better to do this sort of thing. Okay. or you could just put them on separate lines to make it even more clear. You could do it like this, and then just say float F2, F3. Okay, so be careful where you put that asterisk, because remember, once again, it doesn't matter where you put it, but it could lead to some confusion. So I think it's probably best just to stick it right up alongside the variable name that you want to be a pointer. Okay. Well, if you want to go further, let's now that that's out of the way, let's try something else here. Let's take another. If we can do this, we'll say, well, let me fix this other one up first anyway, just before we continue. Suppose I say I want a pointer to a pointer. Can I do that? Well, yeah, I can say star star P1. So what have I just done? Well, it gets a little bit confusing, but I can say P1 is a pointer to a pointer which points to an int. Does that make sense? I hope so. P1 is a pointer to a pointer which points to an int. Well, how does that fit in what we've been saying here in this example? Well, let's give it a value down here. Once we do that, let me go down here and assign a value to it after all of our prints here. I'll say P1 is equal to P. Remember, P was this value here. P was this value here. So well, that's not going to be right. I think we have to say the address of P, like this. Let me get this straight. P1 is the address of P. So P1 is pointing to P, which is this address, and at this address there's an integer 42. So let's see if we can print that out. Printf. First of all, we'll just print out P1. Okay, so P1 is %P /n quote comma P1. So what we're doing here is we're just printing out P1 or print P1. So that should print the address of P1. Just like we printed up here, we printed the address of P. Well, now this is going to be the address of P1. Well, what's the value of P1? So printf value of P1 is, remember P1 is a pointer to a pointer, and I've given it a value up here as the address of P. So the value of P1 is going to be an address %P /n quote comma the value of P1 is P1. The value. Okay, so this will be the value of P1. Remember, the value of P1 should be the address of P. Let's see what happens if we compile this guy and if we run it. So we said that X is 42, P is this address here. Okay, so P is a pointer, and that's the address of that pointer. P1 is also a pointer, but P1 has a different location in memory. But you notice here that P1 has a value, which is the address of P. So it's kind of, I'm doing a double indexing. The address or the address of the address. So let's go and see if we can print out 42. So value of, I think I should have put value of P1, value of, I guess, star P1, oops, star P1 is %D, %D /n quote comma star P1. So that is the value, value of star, well, it's a value, let's say, at star P1. Let's see how this works. let's do a save here. See if we can compile this guy again. And we'll run it. And you notice the value of star P1 is 42. Well, let's see if we can draw some picture here to make this better or understood better. How can I draw a picture? I need a, well, let's see if I can bring up maybe I could do this with GIMP or with my paint. Let me see if I can install my paint here. Hang on a second. I like to use a program that's available on Linux called My Paint. Let me see if it's on Linux Mint here. Install My Paint. Oh, yes. You'll notice that since Lesson 28, I switched my desktop from Fedora. I switched it over to Linux Mint. The reason is because I've actually purchased a brand new desktop computer, and I just wanted to use a new Linux distribution, and I've switched over from Fedora to Linux Mint. Okay, so let me see if I can start this My Paint, which is graphics. There it is right here. And let me see if I can draw a picture of, quite big here. Let me make this window smaller. Move this code over here. And I'll choose a brush here. Change brush. I'll change my brush to something a little bit bigger. Wonder if that's going to be good. No, let's try something else. Brush, something like that. Okay. So let's see if we can draw a picture in memory of what this thing looks like. First of all, I'll draw here the variable x. Well, actually this is x here. I don't know if I can erase. Can I erase something with this thing here now? I don't know. Just erase this guy here. I guess this brush isn't very good. Let me make a better brush here. Change brush, perhaps to this one here. And I put 42 in here. So let me just erase this guy here. Oops. I guess I gotta change it to a bigger brush to erase it. And let's go back to the other brush, which is this one here. Okay, so this is my X, and in X I put 42. Well, I also have P over here, so this is going to be P, and P is pointing to this location over here. So when I printed out P, the value at P is BE, so you can see this is the, if you look at it, it's BECB. I don't know if I can write it all in there. BECB, and it just goes bump, 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 right? So that's P. So P is pointing to 42. But I also made another pointer using the 2 asterisks. So I have over here, I have P1 like this, and P1 is pointing over to P. And P1 is, well, you can see it's almost very similar. The last 3 digits are different. 2, 3, C. This one is, where is it? It's 2, 3, C. And the first ones were all the same. And let me get my brush here and erase that out here. Change brush. Back to this one. Select eraser. Let me just get this guy out of the way here. Okay, change my brush back to, this guy, and see I had this one was 240, so here we have dot, 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 all this, it begins with the same, but it's 240. So in order to dereference, to get that 42, I had to use asterisk P here, which gives me a 42, and over here I used 2 dereference operators, star, star P 1, to get me all the way back to 42. Well, if this doesn't confuse you, I don't know what will. And this lesson's been going on for too long. But I'm going to continue in lesson 30 with more on pointers. So please practice some of this code here. I'll post it up to my GitHub account, and you can try playing with it, modifying it. Okay, so I'll see you later for lesson